Hello friends, in the series which we are doing on the history of India from 1750s to 1857, we will continue with what we were doing earlier in the context of the indigenous as well as the colonial education. And in the earlier lecture, I talked about the indigenous education which was prevalent in India, as well as the kind of interventions which were made by the British in India in terms of the Orientalist as well as the Anglicist controversy, and at the same time how the Macaulay's Minute it settled the issue in the favor of the Anglicist, and how English was introduced in India. This is what we find with the Macaulay's Minute and the Governor General's resolution of 1835. And Macaulay's Minute talks about the aim of promoting the knowledge of sciences could only be accomplished by the adoption of English as a medium of instruction. He in a way rejects the claims of the mother tongue on the ground that Indian languages were not equipped to serve as media of this knowledge transmission. So we find that Macaulay had these kind of notions when he was talking about the introduction of English language as a medium for instruction. And at the same time, he also did not consider that the mother tongue or the Indian languages, they were in a way equipped to serve as media of this knowledge transmission. So Macaulay definitely had these kinds of ideas in his mind, and he was prejudiced, as we have talked earlier as well, when he suggested that the entire literature of the East will come in a good in one shelf of a good European library. So he did not consider that the literatures of the East, they had this kind of a capacity, that they were so developed, and they rejected that the East did not have any kind of a diversified and valuable literature which can be used in India at that point of time. And he focuses that English education will have comparatively more positive effect in the Indian context, and he felt that English as a language of contemporary times, and it is also the language of the ruling classes, and English it has that kind of a potential where it can also be used as a language of commerce, and he felt that similarly as is just as Greek and Latin they were very important in Renaissance in Europe, similarly English position was also there in the context of India, and he felt that natives were also very ready in that context to learn English, and Indians, they will become comparatively good scholars of English as well. So this is what Macaulay had in his mind in terms of his ideas, and he felt that when Indians, they will be taught in the English language, then Indians will only remain Indians in blood and color, and their morality, intellect, opinion, everything will change, and how the classes and the masses, they will be separated with the introduction of the English language. This is what he felt. And one can also see that we find that when in the high schools and the colleges which were under the control of the government, how English that was being educated to the pupils there, and this decision of the government, it was very momentous kind of a decision, and it had a very long term impact which can be seen even in the present times, and how Western education, when it was being introduced, it in a way brought the Indians into the closer contact with the Western ideas of the government and democracy, and it led to the rise of the Indian nationalism. So when we tend to understand the importance of English, the way it was being introduced or the kind of impact it created, we find that that how English as a language, when it was introduced in the 19th century and thereafter, it became some kind of a lingua franca in the Indian context, that how it became a language of communication between the eastern, western, northern and southern regions. And as India is a diverse country where so many languages are there, so English as a language of mobility could also be seen, where people, those who got educated in English, they had better chances in terms of getting more economic opportunities. That is how it was being placed by the Europeans at that point of time. And we also find that how during the national movement as well, that the people, those who were when the Congress was established, and the people, those who were associated with the Congress, and how these people they were also conversing in English. Many of them, they belong to the elite section of the society, and the Western ideas of the government and democracy, they were also being brought to India. But when we tend to understand the kind of ideas which were talked about in the context of the introduction of English, we find that how Macaulay was criticized by the Orientalist for his rhetorical belittling of Indian culture, and H. Wilson and W. H. Macnaghten, two committed Orientalists of Macaulay's times, were furious at denial of a whole cultural legacy as valueless by a person who had lived no more than a few years in India. So the people, those who were aware about the Indian civilization, Indian culture, as I talked about Wilson and Macnaghten, and how they criticized Macaulay at that point of time, that how Macaulay was seeing the cultural legacy of India as valueless. And Macaulay had not lived much years in India. He had arrived in India around that time only, and he was not well conversant, well versed with the Indian culture and civilization. So a person who did not even know about the Indian culture and civilization was considering the Indian civilization or the Indian legacy as valueless. So it was seen that, it was realized that Macaulay was a prejudiced person, and he did not have that kind of a capacity where he could understand the Indian civilization and culture, and whatever ideas he was trying to thrust upon the Indians in the framework of the introduction of the English education, we will find that they were the result of his own prejudices, it was the result of his own intolerance, and they were the result of his own particular understanding, which was comparatively narrow in nature. And when you see it in the larger framework, in the kind of developments which were happening at the global level, then we will find that these kind of ideas, they were as a result of the kind of thinking which was there in those times, and the thinking was basically more imperial in nature. And we also find that they did not have any kind of a consideration for a different culture, that how you have to realize the differences which are there in culture, and you are in a way trying to deny that there is some kind of a cultural uniqueness. So one has to understand the arguments which are being given by Macaulay in this particular context, that imperial thinking was trying to impose its own ideas in the context of hegemony on the people, those who were not able to take their own decisions because they were being colonized by the Europeans at that point of time. So this kind of imposition of their ideas, of their practices on the helpless people at that point of time was reflective of the imperial ideological positions, and many a times they resorted to various kinds of ideologies by which they referred to as evangelicalism or utilitarianism or Orientalism or liberalism. But all these ideologies, if we tend to understand them and how these ideologies, they were being in a way used in the context of the educational policies as well, that none of them they say that British, they should leave India and they should go back. All these ideological positions, whatever position they have, they want that that the British rule in India, it should continue, and it was in their own favor and they were able to benefit a lot when British they were ruling India from all points of view. Economic consideration was the main consideration, that how due to the British establishment in India, how due to the British expansion in India, we find that British because of the drain of wealth, because of the various policies which they followed in the economic sphere, they were able to enrich themselves, and many of the developments which were taking place in Europe, especially in Britain, they could be sustained by the kind of money and the resources which were being produced in these regions. So we find that how the Indian population it could be controlled by the British, and they suggest that the control of the population will only take place when you have this kind of a plan in terms of education. And they talked that they had this kind of an idea where they will lead to the intellectual and the ethical revival of the colonized subject. So we find that this kind of an idea where education was being used, but at the same time it was also disguised, because British they were suggesting that it was leading to the intellectual and the ethical revival of the subject, but at the same time it was not happening. Rather, their motive was to control the Indians, how Indians they could be utilized for their own purposes, and how English as a language could be used in India. And as you can see on the screen as well, that how education in India was to be secular in nature, and the ethical training was to be supplied by learning grand works of England's historic literature, whereas in England humanistic learning and in English schools in early Victorian period they centered on classical literatures, Greek and Latin, and not English at all. So when you see that the kind of changes which were being brought, which were being introduced in India, that how English was introduced in India, but at the same time we find that English was not introduced in England. Greek and Latin they were comparatively more preferred. So English as a language was not popular at that point of time in Britain. And if you see the origin of English, we find that as an Anglo-Saxon language, English initially was used by the working class, and French was the language of the elite even in Britain. So the promotion of English as a language of the elite class, promotion of English as a language which has huge literature, which has the ideas of humanism, which has the ideas of rationalism. So that was some kind of a deliberate policy at that point of time, and British they wanted to promote these kinds of policies so as to present themselves in a way that how they were being they were to be considered as superior to the Indians and the other natives at different places. So we find that in India, in this context, that the professorships of English they were not there in Oxford and Cambridge, but they were being introduced in India. So it was not a thing, and how Shakespeare became important during this point of time, that how he was being introduced in India. So English as a language was not very popular in Britain at that point of time, but here in India English was to be promoted in such a way that it gains some sort of an ascendancy in comparison to other native languages. And we also find that when we were talking about the 1813 Charter Act, that how 1 lakh rupees they were to be spent in India every year for the promotion of education, and in 1833 Charter this amount was increased to 1 million, that how 10 lakh rupees were to be spent every year. And we find that English at that point of time, when it was introduced after the 1833 Charter with the arrival of the Governor General's resolution in 1835, and Macaulay's Minute on Education when it came, and how William Bentinck adopted the Macaulay's Minute. And we find when the 1853 charter comes, then British, they decided that they should have some kind of a more coherent education policy in India. And we also find that in some of the regions, northwestern provinces, where Governor James Thomason, he introduced the vernacular education. So these kinds of experiments during the times of Lord Dalhousie, they were being made, and Dalhousie saw that they were some sort of a success, and they were also being introduced in Bengal and Punjab. So we basically find that other kinds of things in the context of education were also happening at that point of time, and some kind of a thrust on the vernacular education was also being provided by some of the lieutenant governors like James Thomason did in the northwestern provinces. And when Dalhousie saw that it was successful in nature, then it was also introduced in other provinces as well, for example Bengal and Punjab. So these kinds of experiments in the context of India, when we try to understand them, and how the kind of contribution which was made, that how later Dalhousie was also instrumental in the establishment of the Presidency College, and how in the context of India, Bethune College, Bethune School, which was in a way taken over or supported by Dalhousie at his own personal cost. So we basically find that the dispatch, or the Wood's dispatch, which was sent to in India at that point of time in 1854. So Wood's dispatch was in a way categorized or analyzed by Dalhousie in three different heads. First was the machinery for the managing of the Department of Education. Second was the establishment of the university, and third was the issue of the grants in aid. So under these categories, we find that the Wood's dispatch, which was another important step in the context of education in India, could be seen. And how the Department of Education, it was being in a way set up by Dalhousie, how the universities in Calcutta, Bombay and Madras, they were being initiated in 1857, and how the issue of the grants in aid so as to support the educational institutions, that was also being done. So we find that Wood's dispatch basically was talking about, it was under a committee which was under Charles Wood, who was the president of the Board of Control, and dispatch basically was in a way some sort of an Anglo vernacular educational epo. So this is what the Wood's dispatch talked about, and there was some kind of controversy as well that Charles Wood did not mention Dalhousie as one who contributed to the Wood's dispatch. When he was there in London, he did not talk about the kind of correspondence which Dalhousie shared with Wood, and Wood did not mention Dalhousie as one who provided him the kind of information which he used for the Wood's dispatch. So Wood's dispatch was an important step in the context of the Indian education, and when we say that how the Anglo vernacular educational epo, in that context, that how English as well as vernacular education, both these educations, they were being promoted during this time. So we find that if we see the period from 1750s to 1857, to this point the Wood's dispatch was an important contribution from the British, and it also was in a wishing to way that how English education should also be promoted in India, and how in a way various universities, they were being established, as I told you, from Calcutta, Bombay and Madras, different universities they were being established in India, and how British, they were in a way trying to intervene in the context of Indian education, Indian education, and various schools and colleges which were being established in India, and their main issue, main objective in that context was to produce clerks. So these clerks, they could be used at the lower administrative positions. In the context of the education which was to be provided to the girls, we find that how there was some kind of precedents of the female intellectual participation even before the coming of the British, and how women from the respectable families, they were being taught at home, and tutors or relatives, etc., they were teaching the women at home, and this kind of a tradition which was there in India at that point of time. And we also find that learning at home, where family was the main unit, where upper classes, they wanted that it should remain restricted to to that place only. And we also find that some sacred and semi-sacred associations, they were also in a way trying to help in the context of the women's education. We see that in the context of women education, three important agencies were important: Christian missionaries first, male intelligentsia, and the British government. And in the context of the Indian male intelligentsia, we find that Raja Ram Mohan Roy, he championed the cause of the emancipation of women through education. As you can see on the screen as well, that these were the three important agencies which were indulging in the issue of the education of women. And how, apart from Raja Ram Mohan Roy, we also find that Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, he was also very instrumental in terms of opening of so many schools, and both these stalwarts, they contributed a lot in terms of women's education, as they felt that emancipation of women will only take place through education. There were so many misconceptions in the Indian society that if women, they will be educated, then their husbands will die. If women, they will be educated, then they will be considered immoral in nature. So all these kind of superstitions which were there in the Indian society, they were not to be in a way believed, that if such kind of things they will happen. And with the arrival of the reformers, especially the male reformers, those who wanted to bring this kind of a change in that kind of a setup, so it was a very it was a good initiative by these people, and people like Prasanna Kumar Tagore and the Desrosiers, they also played an important role during that point of time. Henry Vivien Desrosiers and his associates, they were also involved. And how at certain points we find that Brahmo Samaj was also involved, and how Bambu Bodhini Patrika in 1864 was introduced, which educated women could express their views and opinions on the matters of the great grave interest. And in 1876, that Amar Jeevan was an autobiography of Ras Sundari Devi. It was the first autobiography of a woman in Bengal which was written, and how she talks about her own life, where she feels that she has been caged in some way, and how she has to come out of that situation. And she is a self-read and self-taught woman, and she does not disclose till a very later point of time that she got educated on her own. So that was the kind of a situation in which women of even the upper classes, they were living. And we find that the women's education was also not very high in terms of the agenda in the context of the British as well. And when women, they were in a way being when they were being in a way they were being promoted in terms of getting more and more education by the intelligentsia, we find that the women graduates in 1883, Kadambini Ganguly and Chandramukhi Basu. In 1883 they became the first graduates, and today is 10th March, and 10th March is also the death anniversary of Savitribai Phule, who is the first female teacher of India. and the contribution of Savitribai Phule is immense in that context, that how Savitribai Phule and her husband Jyotirba Phule, both of them, they founded one of the first Indian girls school in Pune at Bhidewada in 1848, and through her persistent efforts, that how Savitribai was in a way ridiculed when she tried to educate herself. She was being ridiculed by when she went to school to teach, and a number of schools, they were being opened by Savitribai Phule for the women's education. And when she died in 1897, at that point of time as well, she was associated with teaching learning processes, as well as she was in a way trying to help people at that point of time, those who were afflicted with the bubonic plague, and she herself contracted it and died. So we find that how she was working as a socio-religious, as a reformer that way. She wanted to remove the kinds of evils which were there in the society, and she was a poetess and an author. So all these kinds of things during this time we find, and there was a lot of focus in the context of the developments, that how colleges at different places dealing with the medicine or engineering, they were also being opened in Roorkee, in Bombay, in Calcutta, and the arrival of the railways and the telegraph at that point of time was also very important, that you needed people, these people at that point of time, those who will be involved in the railway and the telegraph development. And after 1850s, we also find that some of the commissions, they were also being introduced. For example, Hunter Commission also came, and they also played some kind of an important, they pointed out some of the important aspects with which education has to deal with. So to summarize, I would like to say that how Indian contributors in the context of the intelligentsia, they played an important role. The role of Ram Mohan Roy, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Savitribai Phule is immense in terms of education in India. How the missionaries, they wanted to convert the Indians, and that is how they were imparting the religious education. We also talked about the Orientalist Anglicist debate. We also talked about Macaulay's Minute and the Wood's Dispatch. So when we tend to understand education in a particular framework, then we have to keep in mind the kind of things which happened during this period, and the period from 1750s to 1857, as is also a part of the series of the lectures which we are doing. And we find that English as medium of instruction was introduced during this period, and it had a lot of long lasting impact which it created over a period of time, which can even be felt in the contemporary times. So at this, I would like to end the discussion. Thank you.